Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasts.
This is why we share our stories, to help people understand that they can stop and fix their dysfunction. You don't have to pass it on to your kids. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is True Crime Connections. If this is your first time here, I want to welcome you and also welcome you into our Rewired and Inspired community. This week, we are talking with Jeff Robertson. He is a coach and a man of many trades. So, Jeff, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the connections. I've been following along with all the good things that you're doing, the messages you're putting out, and it's really cool to come alongside some of the other voices that you've had that help. I think we're all amplifying some of the same messages at the end. So thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, thank you so much. That means a lot to me. I love it when people are like, I love what you're doing. It's like, people get it.
And it's such a noisy world, right? We operate in such a noisy world. Podcasting's easy for us now, but you find these ones that are really unique, and it keeps speaking to we're all speaking to similar audiences, and we can all keep rising together. I think it's really cool to see us all come together through these platforms. As we were leading in to tell you this, like, can you imagine the lift that it would have took for me and you to connect 20 years ago, right? Just now our technology allows us to see your stuff and see mine. We were joking about what it would take to dial a phone 20, 30 years ago, right? So just for you and I to have this interview would have been unheard of. So just fortunate enough to be able to take advantage of the technology too in a positive way.
For sure. I'd be standing by the mailbox.
Yeah. Right. Yes. It's yeah, you're exactly right. It would be, we would have to do this with a letter and not even a 110 camera with a flash cue, right?
Possible.
Yeah, and then I could record. You could record the questions on VHS and send me the tape, and then I could record my part answering those and put the VHS back into the thing and send it to you, and you could produce it like that, maybe. So.
Well, that's funny. Well, I'm glad we've come up with the times. So, So where exactly do you want your story to begin? I know you've got a lot.
Yeah, no, and just what we were talking about there as we were leading in, when I speak and from my audiences, and I'll take it back to that earlier childhood days, and I think it's the focus that you and I had talked about for here was just that childhood trauma and childhood experiences. And I think there's a great place because when I speak, that's where I anchor my story, is starting on those things that went on as a kid and things that were left untouched. And I kind of thought that they were dealt with and had gotten the attention that they needed. And turns out they hadn't. And they kind of festered over the years and they would come back up from here to there. So I really enjoy just putting it out there for everyone else that have experienced this, making sure you give it the amount of attention that it deserves. And it will never, it'll never truly, I think it becomes a part of who you are and your identity, the stuff that happened to us as kids, whether it's positive or negative. And, obviously we're going to talk about probably some things that will be negative today, but I was telling my wife last night, just, talking about what I had to do today. And I was coming on here to work with you and your team and what I was going to talk about. And I had my daughter starting to be age-wise about where I was. That's what I was thinking about earlier. I was like, hang on, I jumped a little bit too far ahead. But just knowing where my kids are now and how it's relating. So the conversation last night was kind of the same thing. She was like, well, why does this affect you? why do you? And I said, I don't know. I said, I can just tell you that I enjoy talking about it. And it may not be affecting me negative anymore, but I enjoy talking about it because I realize that there's this big gap of folks that haven't talked about it. And I just try to put it all out there. So and here's the other thing I learned through her is like her bad days and my bad days as kids were two very, very different things. Her bad day was maybe getting a C on a paper and tripping on the playground. Mine may have been sleeping on the floor through gunfire, right? So it's two very different situations. So she sometimes struggles to relate with why I love talking about, why I'm still in these modes of why it comes up and why I relate a lot of things to it. And because she doesn't know what it was like for that, but I don't know what it's like for her. And some friends have helped me with that over the time too. It's like they will tell me, it's like, just remember, your worst days, your kids are going to have very bad days that will not resemble your bad days, but it's still bad for them, to keep that in perspective. And I was like, so it's been good advice. But to speak to that was, I grew up in a rural area. Like we weren't poor. I never wanted for anything, never went to bed hungry. We had, I distinctly not having running water I remember not having running water living with when I lived with my grandparents for a short time, but that was very short lived. But that's one of the things I'll tell people. It's like, I do remember a time of not having running water there. And, but we had, but my grandfather was, he was a business guy and farmer, and he was just, he was very, very, that's where the saying comes from. He just lived a reckless lifestyle. And he was, he drank more than he should. And he just didn't do a good job of managing his emotions. And so he acted out sometimes through gun violence and as we were leading in, I had shared the other day on my social media, he had gotten, he had lost his license, through driving and through reckless drivings and DUIs, and the state took his license, but he could still drive his tractors. It didn't apply to that. So he had gotten a DUI while driving a tractor. And that's how he would act out. So growing up as a kid was one of the guy that I thought was everything. My mom is one of 11, I think. So a bunch of kids, a bunch of grandkids. By the time I come around, I'm the absolute youngest. I think I am one of the youngest. My mom is the youngest sibling. I'm not the youngest grandchild, but I was one of the youngest people that came into his life. So a lot of his kids are grown and they're all older, and so I was being raised by them. And he didn't manage his anger very well. So he would do things. So that's kind of the situation that I grew up in. So you're talking rural America, bouncing kind of between aunts, grandmothers, my mom here and there when I'm really small, and you're talking like that going into school, like kindergarten, first grade, second grade type age wise. So really, really small kid dealing with these big adult type problems. So I distinctly remember a lot of that things go on. And the more as I get older, like I'll have a dream. I remember, I'm like, was that a dream or was that a memory that you kind of suppress that stuff? And I'll talk to my mom, because back then it was, you didn't talk, because my grandfather he came in one time and he had been out and they had fixed him some coffee, and I was there in the room and I was kind of picking with him. He threw that cup of coffee on me, and I just remember like that shirt I was wearing had stuck to me, one of those old designs, and it just stuck to me and I could not peel it off, and it was like it melted to my body. And the conversation with the aunts and everybody that came to rescue me out of that situation was, you can't talk about this at school. If you talk about it at school, they're gonna take you away from us. And then, so you was taught at a very young age, like, if you like being here, you love your grandma, right? I'm like, yeah, hell, absolutely. Like, well, if you go to school and you tell anybody what happened, they're going to take you away from us. So that's, I just remember that. And I share that with folks all the time. Like, that was as a kid of having to make that decision of whether I was going to, how I was going to impact our family. I'm a 4, 5, 6 year old kid at this time, and being influenced by the adults of saying, don't talk about this. So I grew up in that thing. So a lot of times something would happen, and they, just through their conversation with me, I would suppress that memory. And as I've gotten older, I'll be in a situation or something other, something will come up, and like I called my mom one day and I go, I'm pretty sure. I said, you ever remember my grandmother shooting at my grandfather? And she's like, no, that didn't happen. I go, I just remember an aunt grabbing me and running me out the door. And something had happened. And she's like, yeah, I don't think it ever happened. But I'm telling you, I believe it did. So, so that was kind of a lot of it, right? So as I grow up, there's more of that, and that gets, that's more of the same. Whether my mom had moved me, I was into with her for a while, and I just didn't like that school, and so I went back and I ended up living ultimately with my aunt for many years, and then when my mom had came in, and I'm older now, so I can run away from, and I know not to get in the middle of a lot of my grandfather's stuff. So kind of was able to avoid him, but my mom was more inserted in that picture through running our family business. I think I was like in 4th grade when she started running the family business. And, that's about the time when my grandfather's just, his license is gone and he is tearing hell off the hinges in our neighborhood on the weekends of just driving and stuff. And I think I can't remember where I'm at school wise, and I'd had a one of the kids that came and stayed with me, and it just so happened that he would gotten off the bus with me while my grandfather was while we're waiting on my mom to pick me up, and my grandfather's in one of his modes and just racing up and down the road and hooping and hollering. And my friend saw this, and my friend ultimately went back to school and told everyone what he saw. And it just was so embarrassing. And just because, so I didn't have a lot of, after that, nobody came over, right? So
I get that.
So this little stuff like that, he liked to play, he had his guns and different stuff. And then, it was always something going on. And then a lot of this environment for me gets bigger because like you have, a relative pass away or something along those lines. And so you go around all these folks in funerals, and my family were really big. They acted out at their funerals and stuff like that. So it was kind of compounded just my childhood effect of my memories of going through this time with everyone. And it all kind of comes together childhood wise when you talk about, and this is what I was telling you earlier about where we're at. Grandmother ends up with Alzheimer's, and we didn't know. You're talking in the 80s here, so we don't know. Folks don't know. She had a spell. It's rural America, and no one can really explain what's going on with her. But she had dementia, and then she had Alzheimer's before folks really knew what Alzheimer's was back then. And she had borrowed a gun from my aunt, and she ultimately killed herself in like June of would have been my 6th grade year going into 7th. And that's what I was telling you. It's kind of like where my daughter is right now. So I found her, and I found her that day, and the police came, and aunts and uncles, everybody comes in and like, oh, you're okay, you're okay. And I'm like, at the time I've dealt with so much. This was just another piece of my dealings, right? This is just another thing that I'm going to work through. So years later, and you go on, and I have this career in the public safety and stuff, and that's why I'll tell people now, like, public safety professionals are the best at hiding their emotions and feelings and behind other people's problems. And when you go to work I went to work at 15 years old at our local volunteer rescue squad, and they're going through like, hey, this is things that we deal with, and this, that, and other. And I was like, I've already dealt with all this. I found my grandmother dead. And I'm like, so that was like a resume. It's like it was like I checked the box on something to where Like, everyone asks you, like, were you good with that? And everyone always says yes. But were you? I wasn't. I don't think I was. When I talk about it now, it's very liberating, because I felt like I was so angry at just my life and what how all of this, and I found this place where I could go and operate within other people's chaos, and I thrived. I loved EMS, and I loved the fire department, I love law enforcement, I love all that brain. But and also, I was able to bring in my life and live that life of chaos and uncertainty and all these things inside of that. So that's kind of what I was telling you about with my daughter going into seventh grade, and I was giving her some words of encouragement. It sounds horrible, but like thinking about it now, but I was like, we have I have you set up to where you're in a very different situation, and I've worked hard to guard that, and I've worked hard to make sure that you have a better springboard, and you do too. And I was like when. And so I'll share some of my feelings with her. And it's like, when I was going into seventh grade, I had just found your grandmother. My grandmother just passed away, and I had found her. She's like, really? And I'm like, yes. She's like, well, I don't have to deal with that. I'm like, no, this is what I'm telling you. And so I try to lean in on her sometimes, or my son, and just kind of letting them know, not that they have it better or anything like that, but just really letting them know. I need them to understand of where their grandmother came from, the crap that I dealt with, and how hard we work to give them a better life through all that, if that makes sense.
Oh, for sure. It's where we come from. It's why things are the way they are. But you're also saying we're not going to continue this path. We're breaking the cycle, and we're going to do the best we can to give you the life that you deserve.
We was talking about that. My mom, it kind of set me off on this when she had asked my mom we talk about it now, but my mom at one point in time had said, I was like, why did we let this happen for so long? And my mom said, that's the way it was. She goes, oh, it's just the way it was back then. And I was like, no, it wasn't. It's the way it was for us. And we were in a situation that turns out the rest of the world, when I talk to my wife now, my wife's like, no, that was not my life. And so as I grew up and got around other people, sometimes we migrate to the kids that experience similar traumas or what have you. You would all kind of find yourselves, around like-minded individuals through your conversations or what have you. But I also found public safety and through that path, and so I ended up in what was positive help for the community and using. So I could really say that, through my efforts, I've always been able to use them to help our communities and different things. But sometimes like I overlook kind of just giving attention to the things that I needed. And really getting having my mom understand that stuff wasn't cool. We end up leaving. I'm living aunts and uncles and stuff, and then there's a point in time when my mom is getting down to where she's like fed up. But I'm going to leave this, and she's neighbors with my grandfather. So after my grandmother had passed away, my grandfather is living next door to where my mom's business was, and he sets her car on fire, and like just my mom sleeps on the floor while he's shooting through the house. And the cops come down, and ultimately they arrested him. I ended up going to work for that sheriff's department years later, and that's how I'm known. I'm known as that guy's grandson. When they hired me in to work there, right? So my interactions with the law enforcement back then, become kind of my, that's how everyone knew me, knew my family was through those interactions with that. So we kind of go into hiding just to escape this family, because the family was it was a family business, and there was a little bit of turmoil over money and just different things that running a family business will bring to you sometimes, right? There's always this. Running a business is tough, but running a family business with that much influence, negative and positive, is even tougher. So mom kind of threw the towel in and she left. And there was a point in time, like my grandfather just goes into total self destruction mode, and we're living in we get this call one night. He went to my aunt's house that was next door and basically kicks the door open. She's there with another aunt, and he shoots her. He shoots her. Should have killed her, but missed all the things. And we go to the hospital, and she's like, he's in. I think they had arrested him or whatever, but she ultimately she didn't testify against him, because he was drinking, or he didn't know he was out of his mind. He didn't know what he was doing. So, it kind of all accumulated with that. And I think that was the last. I think he kind of cleaned all of his stuff up after then. I think it's when his light bulb moments kind of went off. But that's the continuation of things that I remember was all the way up until that point of dealing with them. And that's, we still dealt with it over the years, but like everybody wanted you to accept that as the normal. And it's not. You don't have to. Looking back on that, when I talk to people about it now, like if you're hearing this and you're in that situation, that's not normal.
Right. That was your normal, but that's not normal.
Yeah. So,
right.
And even I'll catch some flack out of this for just telling business, for telling family business, but there's a certain point in time when, and it's through, just through my help that I enjoy. And I use all my stories that I tell now is 100% to try to leave with the world being a better place and try to help as much as I can, to the detriment of whatever feelings that my family might have of that. And I don't really give a shit, but ultimately that's just their mentality, right? It's like, that's, they did a lot to protect and to let that dysfunction continue to fester over the years. And it's crazy. It was just
right.
like when I stay here telling you about it, I'm like, it's a lot to, it's very liberating to tell it, but it's also, it's the rest of the world when they hear that is like, how? How did it get to that point? I don't know. And I don't know what they're like, girl. I know where I entered the world at, but I don't know like what had aggravated him other than alcohol and reckless behavior. Right? So it's what I kind of, I don't know what his triggers was, and I never got to really understand the backside of what made him tick, I guess you could say.
Didn't you also say like the feds have kicked in your doors and like you've had a lot?
Yeah, the anything with him, always majority of my grandfather's stuff, there would be some kind of interaction with law enforcement. Ultimately would be the demise, right? So whether he would always end up, whether it was driving, it would always end up in arrest. But there was a couple of times where he had I think it was the night where he had shot my mom's windows out and set her car on fire. And he had went and hid in the woods, and they thought he was in his house, and they were like getting ready to gas his house. They're like, "We're going to come out. You got 30 seconds, or we're going to shoot you." And he walked up beside him, and he was like, "Hey, don't shoot that. Don't shoot that thing through my window. It'll break my window." And they're like, "Oh, right here he is. Arrest him, arrest him." So he had some. He had some moments like that. As I progressed through my career, I didn't never get my personal doors kicked in, but I got investigated, some other stuff that I had dealt with during my career that was ultimately cleared and exonerated. But just the stresses of that, it all accumulates to kind of my personal self-destructions, right? Of where I really just ran out of, kept just pushing all this stuff off and just pushing it back. And then ultimately, life kind of was ready for me to move on. It was telling me like, "Hey, you need to move on. You need to move on." And I kept pushing it back, saying, "Nah, I'm good. I'm good." And or you need to deal with this. And the more that I pushed things away, the more that it was like, "Nah, we're going to help you change this career." So I ultimately ended up with getting a DUI, and my public safety career ended, which really started this amazing business career. it was hard for a while, but ultimately it kicked off this, this career of entrepreneurship, and then ultimately into, what I do now in my speaking. And um, I ran other people's business, for about 10 years. I worked at a company and we built this amazing company, and I learned how to do operations and marketing and digitals and just all the things you could think of. And I've always had this, I've been really good at teaching, and I love talking in front of people. And as you can tell, I hadn't shut up since you said go. So I really enjoy enjoy just talking, and so my instructor side has helped me through all the stuff I do now. So I'm back to motivating speaking and doing some keynote work, and I layer in. We talked a lot about the childhood stuff, but the rest of my journey is really cool how it all comes together. And there was a couple butterfly moments in there as well, that is very powerful. From Lynn Lewis would describe it as divine intervention is the word she would drop on me. And then I think she told me one day she used she goes, Jeff Robertson, our meeting was divinely orchestrated. So I really pay attention to a lot of just relationships that I create, people who come into my life, making sure that it's everybody that comes in, if they overstay a few minutes, there's a purpose, and just figuring out what our purposes are for each other and why we decided we was going to be here in this moment. And I think ours is to hopefully amplify more of your story and my story, and how we can just help as many people as we can.
Of course, it's never too late. It's never too late to turn your life around. Doesn't matter what you came from. You could have even had a background worse than that, and still you can turn your life around. And some of the times when we do lose things that we are so sad that we lost, it's actually a blessing in disguise, because that means something better is coming that is going to suit us better. You don't see it at the time, but like you said, look at what you were able to accomplish because of said things, like just because one door closes, I mean, others are going to open. You just never know what's in front of you.
We were driving a couple weeks ago, and driving along, shooting a breeze, and all of a sudden, tree falls down across the road. Big old tree. Like it would have ruined our days. We would have gotten hurt if that tree, 10 seconds. And we turn around, go the other way. And I was telling someone the other day, they were down on their luck. So it's about timing. Man, if I'd have made, if I'd have been here. And I was like, listen, not all timing is works against you. And you think it does right now, and that's because your emotions are tied around of how bad timing affected you. And I was like, time is your friend sometimes. In fact, time is probably your best friend all the time. And I used that story, and I was like, if timing would have been 10 seconds off, I wouldn't have probably been here telling you. I wouldn't be here talking to you, maybe, because that tree would have fell across our car, and we were driving 70 miles an hour going down the road. So this is not it would have been something catastrophic that would have really disrupted our family. So timing, as much as we give it a bad name, and we always use the word bad timing, but ultimately timing's good. And the moments are kind of, if you lean into the universe, and there's I work with Johnny Savage a lot, man. And Johnny's, if you want to, Johnny's got a book on crap. I want to say Lost at Sea, but that's not it. It's close to that, and I'm going to apologize to him for having a brain moment here. But he's worked with me on just understanding his relationship with God. And when you get into those divine, and Lynn and some of the folks that have been plugging in with me in the last year, especially, of that those moments, and just paying attention to those. And I went through all that stuff as a kid to be able to to be able to share those. And hopefully there's someone out there now who's ready to get out of the dysfunction, or there's a parent that is, you and I had briefly spoke about that, and parenting's tough, and it's absolutely, it's one of the most fulfilling things you'll ever do. And it's rewarding and it's your legacy and it's your thing, but it is absolutely, it's one of the hardest things you'll ever do because there's no playbook, there's no manual, there's no, let's get the manual out of the dash and see what fuses need to be changed, right?
So my mom used to always say, you didn't come with a manual.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so when you lean into that is I have every opportunity to pass along my dysfunction to my kids. And I could stop this conversation and go tear hell off the hinges and everybody would be like, well, that's how he was raised. That's what he knows. And I don't, that's no, we can't do that. I know that that's not where we want to go. So, when we were talking a little bit earlier there is if that's probably some of the bigger hopes I get out of. I enjoy the fun, telling the fun stuff. Listen, let me tell you, you start telling stories about growing up in rural America and your grandfather being a hellraiser and getting arrested for DUI. I can tell some funny stories, and I can, and I do, and I have a great time telling them and using them to help people and stuff like that. But I also enjoy telling it to help people understand that that's something they can stop and they can fix their dysfunction and they don't have to pass that on to their kids and their kids can, that was me and my kids last night. I'm like, y'all don't deal with this stuff. Y'all, we have stopped it. We've walled it off. You all have new roots. You have new trees planted. Your family tree is full of life and clean branches. And if you are, the only expectations I have of you two is to take care of that tree and honor the hell that your grandmother went through to get me here, just to understand what I dealt with to give you two this opportunity. And their mother is the credit to all that because she helped take this, very reckless. She called it destructive behavior when we met, and I thought it was reckless. I liked reckless better, so I coined reckless is what I put on my shirts. But she's the one that called it out, and she's like, you have these destructive behaviors that are going to kill you if you don't fix them. And so through her work with me, and our kids are the benefactor of all of that, and stopping the nonsense and stopping this. Just there's no reason to continue some of that stuff.
Absolutely. Especially when you see what it ended up doing to you. But I think you have to get older and you have to be able to look at it differently. Like it took me into like my 50s to really understand all of this. And I'm like, damn, like
Everybody enjoys hearing your story, right? And that story, you tell it in a hey, here comes Jeff. Hey Jeff, tell them a story about And so there's your friends that are around you are like they help you get those stories off of your chest, but then you actually meet with adults or you meet with folks, those come in your life that say, hey, that's a really good story, but that's not cool. You shouldn't celebrate that. And let's talk about it differently. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute, so I had to approach it differently. I don't know about yours, but that's what my wife's role was. She helped me like stop giving it undeserved attention. Let's give it the attention. Let's put this stuff to bed and really deal with it. And that was like last night. I was like, I don't know. I do not know why this affects me the way it does, but it affects me. And I'm going to use it as a superpower. And I don't know, I can't tell you what your worst day should look like. I can tell you I've dealt with a lot of people's worst days, and in some ways I've could say that I've had some pretty bad days myself, but and I don't know why this is, but I know how I want to use it. And so yours is something similar, I'm sure.
for sure. That's why I'm on the mission I'm on now, is because I want, especially like new or expecting parents, to realize it's okay to make mistakes, but you can't keep reliving them. So if you start to realize what I'm doing is not working for me, look into finding other ways that you can move around that, because there are a lot of times it's just what we limit in our own beliefs. We think we can't do this, we think we can't do that. Well, I bet if you tried as hard as you tried to be a fuck up,
Yeah.
to be on the right path, you could really be somewhere unimaginable that you don't even think that you could get to.
Something that helps with that is really having that outside person that helps you evaluate your influences. And I tell on my podcast, me and Keith Hanks was talking about it. Public safety, using it as a storyteller here. Public safety, but dysfunctional parenting, I could see, because you're all sometimes dysfunctional parenting. You're surrounded by that same network of other parents, so y'all are doing it the way y'all think it should be done. And same thing in public safety, your firehouse culture, your EMS stations, and whether it's a law enforcement shift, is you're influenced by that group of folks. And a lot of times what happened in public safety, nothing, it can be a negative if we don't use it correctly, is you would complete your shift, and then you would go hang out. You got dinner, you got drinks. We had a parking garage we all hung out in. So we were influenced by the same conversations and the same people all the time because we enjoyed each other's company. We had no one from the outside who came in and said, "Yeah, it's not. Yeah, y'all right." So every now and then, it's just inspect who's around you, who's influencing you, and try to change. Get some fresh faces in there that can say, "Yeah, you're doing good," or "Wait a minute, this is not good," or just some new advice that comes in. I think those are, even from parenting, I think it's a really good thing to have too. It's just something that gives you a new lease, a fresh breath that comes in.
Oh, for sure. I watch a lot of like self-improvement videos and all that because, every day I want to be the best version of myself every day. Every day I want to be a better person. I want to help one person. I want to help myself. I want to help my son. I want to help everybody. But what they say is you need to pay attention to your circle. Who is in your circle? If you are hanging out with people who are always down, always negative, always broke, always, they're always drunk, they're doing drugs, guess what? That's going to become you. You need to surround yourself with people who are trying to lift people up, who are trying to work better on themselves, make the world a better place. I mean, you don't have to be on this like all the time. Obviously, you're a person, but you're human. But it's better to surround yourself with people who are doing the work that you want to be doing.
Yeah. How old's your son now?
He's 19.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
There's a lot to be said. It's a very simple, but it's hard too because you don't want, it's hard to show off your dysfunction. I know my mom, she has a lot of pride and she carries herself like that. And she walled off, you know, she walled off a lot of the world from that dysfunction and from a lot of that. But so it's hard to invite that outside look into your life sometimes because you're afraid of how it's going to be perceived. But you also, looking back on it now, you realize how many people are out there in the world that are wanting to help, and just consuming this conversation in your car going down the road on your way to work, and sharing it with. Because I have people that as soon as you produce this, I'm like, I know a handful of people that need to hear this. But just your folks that are hearing this is not sitting back and saying, "Oh wow, it was a good episode." It's like thinking, "Hang on here, who can I send this to that it's going to?" But that's where we don't do enough of the platforms. There's a lot of vanity podcasts. There's like, "Oh, I just want to get my name out," or for whatever the things are. But like your podcast is a very purpose driven. You're trying to reach and you're trying to help, and it's not. We want it to be less entertainment and more impactful. And so I think that's some of the things, because I know people that could hear this, and I've listened to some of your other stuff, and I'll be like, hey, this. Send this. Hey, this is a good listen for you, because people need to hear that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, like when you hit sometimes you'll hear stuff, and I was telling you this, like when I started really trying to dial in finances, listening to Dave Ramsey's podcast. And I was like, I heard the lady and she was bawling, talking about how she had cleaned this up and she did this. And, we was $500,000 and yada, yada, and now my family's this. And I was like, hey, if she can do it, I can do it, And she did it this amount of time. I'm like, crap, we can do this. And it just gave me this lift of like, hang on. Same thing in fitness, right? Of owning my gym and some of the other cool stuff that I've been able to do is if they can do it, I can do it. So same type thing is there's going to be someone who hears this, who's gone through absolute pure hell that probably needs to go give some attention to their situation and just go back and think about it, talk about it. Here's the other thing that I struggled with, and is finding. Everybody's like, Jeff, you ever thought about doing a counselor? And or have you ever talked about doing counseling? And so we'd have pastors. Oh, go see your pastor. Pastor didn't have no clue what I was dealing with. Pastor didn't have, and then they'd say, Jeff, go, especially as you go through public safety, like there's no counselor. Now there is, through military and some of the other stuff. Public safety, law enforcement has done a really good job of converting pastors over. And just some of the, even my role now where I mentor some of these guys and listen, have conversations. But back then there wasn't anyone that I felt confident enough that could relate to the hell I'd been through.
Sometimes you don't need someone to relate, though. Sometimes you just need someone to listen and then to maybe offer, I don't know if it'd be advice because they don't know what you've been through, but to be able to look at it through a different lens sometimes is so eye-opening.
Yeah.
It really is, because everybody's been through something. You cannot be, I don't care what age, even 10, without saying you have not been through something in your life at that point. So we all have things that we're working on.
Yeah, you got that. Me and I have my buddy Brian. We will have these conversations, and we've said the same thing of because it's hard to find people who's been where we've been at, right? Because he grew up somewhat similar. So obviously we're like-minded individuals that are connected just through our conversations and through our life. And he had said that he went and saw a counselor, and he's like, he's like, I was talking to that dude, and he raised a few notes. He said, but I was watching his face. He goes, that guy stood there with his mouth wide open the whole time because he never heard nothing like we were telling him, because he's like, and then what happened? And he goes, I felt like the dude was just enjoying my story of dysfunction. He goes, I felt like I maybe helped him hear some good stories that day. But then we had the conversation about our worst days are not, or somebody else's worst day that they're going to try to equate to ours is relevant. It's my wife's worst day in her mind emotionally has the same response as my worst day through getting hot coffee through them, right? Or whatever. Their emotional reaction was the same thing. My friend Rachel really helped me understand that as time went on about my kids. And she was like, don't get uptight when your kids have bad days. And I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, well, they're just going to have a bad grade on the test, but their response is going to be like your response was when you had your bad days. He said, they're kind of the same in their world. I was like, that's way different. She's like, not in their world, it's not. So having that understanding has been helpful too.
For sure. Exactly. Because in their day, oh my God, that was the worst day. And you can't take that from them because that's how they felt in that moment. And that is their moment to have.
Yeah. And
to learn from and to grow from. And that's all we can do is sit and look at where we are, where we've been, and where we want to go.
Yeah, and try to do it better, right? I don't. I get to coach. I work a lot with, very few people. I mean, obviously, they'll hear more about it now. But I speak publicly, but not to the point of where it's been produced or put out there, right? And that's where I'm kind of headed because that's the calling that I've been wanting to work on more is more of these conversations around this and using that story to really just help other people. And I think that's probably the biggest thing is using these moments that I've had to just help coaches, whether they're and parents and coaching Little League athletics and working inside of those platforms just to try to reach those kids and give them that positive environment, but then trying to help influence the parents as well. Because you'll see it, like you'll see it on a coaching field, like, come on, little Timmy, you got to swing that bat and set another. And I'll like, hey man, we don't talk to them like that. I'll just say, come here, give me some points, right? This is we encourage. We don't. I just have a way that I enjoy, and I try to influence all the parents that are around me. And then we have my kids do. I have them do work. Like, what does playing baseball mean to you? What is it? What does it mean? And I try to share that with the parents, so they can see, like, it's not about hitting the ball over the fence and setting other. It's about, hey, I just want to have fun with my friends. And my kids have taught me that. Like, Dad, don't take this too serious. We're here to have fun, and they keep me in check because we all get competitive, and we start driving like, hey, we're goal focused. My son and daughter pull me aside, hey, taking fun out of it, and that'll remind me to go back, deep breathe, remember, hey, I'm there to influence and not and be more of a positive light than I am a negative, and they help me with that. So it's a big deal.
So important, because if you think more positive, you're going to have more positive experiences. Yeah. If you live in this negative world, oh my God, that cloud is going to be over you nonstop, and ain't nobody got no time for that.
I had Fit Body Boot Camp. I still am an owner, but running Fit Body Boot Camp and coaching classes, and just like that's a great place. That it was really put my life at a time when I haven't shared, like, my members never, they know that I did, I worked in public safety and some other things, but I lived like, I kind of kept everything walled off, but it was really good for me to just help harness a lot of the negative stuff and just kind of wrap my arms around them and help them through their struggles and through their things too. So when I transitioned from law enforcement into career, I landed at a trailer dealership, and my friends were like, holy crap, how are you going to make money? Nobody makes money at this. And it turns out, like, we just didn't know, but we grew from, me and the owner, we ended up growing like a 90-person company and a manufacturing facility, and like he taught me how to do business. And about that 10-year mark, I was like, you know what, I need to go. It was an 8-year mark. I really started thinking about my health and fitness and some other stuff. So I joined the Fit Body, and at first class, I walked out that day and I was like, I'm going to own one of these. I was like, man, it moved me so much. And then, because I just loved the atmosphere, and then a couple years later, I ended up leaving the company I was working for. So I was ready for change, and I went to work for the crew that owned Fit Body Boot Camp. And I was able to, during COVID, I bought my location during COVID. I was partners with a guy for a handful of years, and then I went out on my own in 2020. So that was being able to do that and just give this positive influence into my members, and then through our franchise and all this stuff. If you've never done group exercise, if you like people, and you're trying to find a community that will just absolutely is full of positivity, that is a place to go.
There you go. Yeah, everyone there's working on their body, their mind.
Yeah, and what you'll find, man, the workouts are pre-programmed. Like, you go in as a coach that leads the classes, but it is absolutely our goal at Fit Body is to be the best 30 minutes of somebody's day. So training my team and just working on that, and like telling people, because even like when you tell your team, that lady that's coming through the door, because I knew my members, I knew their home, I knew their situation. I'm friends with all these guys, but trying to train your team up, like, hey, when that lady comes in the door, let's make sure we hold the door and ask her how her day's going, because she doesn't get that at home, or she doesn't get that at work, but she's going to get it here. And that man that's coming in, who's that, is whatever. Like, everybody's day's been affected somehow, and our goal is going to be the best 30 minutes of their day before they go on to their next thing.
Love that. I do. I love that. That's great. Do you want to tell people how they can get a hold of you if anybody would like to get on the podcast or coaching or any of that good shit?
Yes. Last name, my friends in Franklin, they dropped the most of the syllables out of my name when I was a kid. So that's where the Robinson comes from. Even though my name's Robertson, but Jeff Robertson. If you message me on Instagram, that's me. If you message me, direct message me at Jeff, Rabason. If you'll send me a message there, you'll get a response from me because I run my own accounts and I love talking to people. If y'all can't figure that out yet, and I won't shut up. That's the best place. That's where you and I connected. I have a website. You'll find it on there, robinson.com. Same thing, but I use that funny spelling of my last name for all the stuff that I do. And, but I love conversations on Instagram. You can hire me to speak. I'll come do your event, run your workshops, all that cool stuff. I'll tell you more about the story. I take this story and I tell you, I use it. I layer it, and then I was fortunate enough to do undercover police work. And so I have all these amazing stories of just where they integrate into business and communications and whatever that needs to look like. So we tailor a lot of good, we do a lot of taking a lot of my whole story. We drill that down into content that'll serve boardrooms and Fortune 500 companies and just whatever that needs to be as we can do that. And I love doing the big events as well. So when you bring all your podcast guests in and we do a big old event in your hometown for your podcast, I'll be there for that too. So
I would love that. That would be fun. I would. Yeah.
Put it out there. It's going to start coming back to you. That's why I threw it out there for us.
Yeah, I love that idea. Hell yeah. Let's put that out in the universe. Let's go. I'll also make sure I put your links in the show notes.
Yeah, same. Likewise. And I'll do the same. I think there's something to be said, and we take for granted, like, oh, I can't compete with Joe Rogan. I can't compete with this one, that, and the other. But your message speaks to people that need to hear it, and I think don't take that for granted when you're having this unknown guy on here that has a story that you and I hopefully, and I know this without a fact, that we're going to reach the people that need to hear it. So. Keep doing what you're doing, and anything I can do to help support your mission. Make sure you keep me looped in.
Will do. Thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we will stay in touch for sure.
Yeah, that sounds great.
I think we all know somebody who can benefit from this episode. Please make sure to share it with them. And thank you guys so much for listening to my podcast. This really means a lot to me. If one of my episodes has helped you in any way, I would really like to know. It's important for me to know that the work that I'm doing is actually helping people. If you want more of me, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Instagram and TikTok. If you or anyone you know is in need of national hotlines, please go to truecrimeconnections.com. I have all the phone numbers there listed for anything that you could possibly imagine. All right, my Renowned Roots community, keep building hope and gaining strength. Until next time.